Hello! I'm Finneky, the human and storyteller, and this is a tale from one of my field journals. This story is called Away with the Fairies. And now that we're all sitting comfortably, I do hope you enjoy our journey today. Please keep your arms and legs inside the story at all times. And with that, we will begin. So I'm out in the sticks, and I headed out this morning under a kingfisher blue sky to bother the trees for a bit. It's great to be beneath the blue, cross-legged under a pine among the sticks and dirt. A wonderful thing. And I'm having a go at a crossword, or the crossword's having a go at me. But the only crossword I'm achieving is one with myself. Like a nice tray with a hole in it, ain't none of these cubes getting filled, and for the 5th time this week, patience wearing as thin as a chicken's lip, I slap that puzzle book shut and put it aside. Brow crumpled in frustration and palms as clammy as a fisherman's net, I lean back into the tree and look toward the higher branches. Seeing those birds pop about and whistle amongst themselves is a fine thing, but they soon flew away, and as I crane my head to see which way they headed, I see the blue skies above steeping into Earl Grey, and the rumbling clouds of slate soon roll forward like a tide that's been far too long at sea. Here cometh the rain. A fine sign to pick up sticks and head back up the road, and I grab my rotten old crossword puzzle and head back to the trail. And as I emerged back to the path, it began to pour, hammering on in all directions, like a guy trying to chase the dents off his bonnet. Welcome to Wacky World! There'll be no amusements nor refreshments. Just me and my hammer and the dents in my car. So I start galloping down the path, got my crossword shelter in my head like a newspaper hat, and it's the strongest effort that I've put into the thing all day. Finally putting my mind into it. As I'm galloping, I spot something just under the bush. Tiny white mallowy looking thing, tucked right into the root bed. Looks like a sweetie. One of those foamy jelly ones that puff up in the rain. What a lovely thing. The sweetie in the rain. It makes the whole thing worth its while. Even in ruins. But look at the size of that sweetie in the road. It'd feed a family of 4. Quadruple. Anyway. Bent down to take a look, and it's not a sweetie nor mallow or anything of the sort. It's a cat. Tiny little cat. Snowy coloured cat. Rosy wings weighted by the rain looking cat. And just under the bush, curled up like a bun in a baker's window, trembling in the current that swept the floor. That won't do. Not one bit, I said to myself, popping down to scoop up the cat into my hands. Tiny thing wouldn't even fill the palm of my hand, not even half a penny's worth, and I'm trying to blot away the droplets that wade your wings, adjusting to this new duty of care, when I hear a voice, not much bigger than the squeak in an old dresser drawer. Teacake, my love, dinner time! And I spin around and there's no one to be seen. No milkman, no maid, no wizard, no mage. But I see the cat's eyes brighten and dart toward the hedge, one of which I have never seen. This whole thing was a pure tube, just a great corridor of bush extending across the path and far greener than the rest, and a stern reminder that I've been staring into my bootlaces for far too long. Anyway, as I'm staring into my bootlaces, there's that voice again. Teacake, come along, my love. The cat walked to the edge of my hand, her tiny wings persisting against the wind that blew against her. Oh, the hedge it is then, I say, walking towards the hedge with the tiny cat in my hands. Approaching the front, I catch sight of the great brass handle, hinges and bolts lining a door woven of sticks and brush. Out here looking like the quaintest walking freezer the natural world has ever seen. I open the door expecting to find nothing more than a great pile of berries or some wheels of cheese or some squares of cheese or other bear paraphernalia, a pot of honey. Who would be a bear? Anyway. Only to be deceived greatly by my own assumptions. A corridor, lit by fireflies, all bubbling around the place like lava in a lamp. All hedge walls of stick and leaf and a raspberry red carpet embroidered with gold thread running the length of the place. A welcome mat beneath me, with more boot marks than a cobbler's workbench. And the whole place bumps of summer rain. The smell of bother in the window seat while the sky pours among the pine. A great joy. It smelled like dewdrops on a bed of hot tarmac, and if it ain't more gourmet than that, then I'll eat my hat instead. Anyway, I make my way forward with a tiny cat up my sleeve, feeling like a magician whose internal world has just flared into reality. So I reach the door at the end, all oak and brass, yet no lock nor handle, but a plaque that read, "The door is always open." and noticing the door in fact slightly ajar. Beams of light swept over the rounded edges, and I can hear tiny voices and pulling of carts, croquet mallets and tiny rings of bicycle bells, and I think to myself, this is about to be the most active ant's nest I have ever seen. Wow. No ant nor nest, and catch me now before I slide down the hedge and marvel a bit. It's a village! A tiny village, for the best part no taller than my knee. All hustle and bustle, blueberries and bubbles. Minute beings traipsing up and down the road, all petal bonnets and winkle-pecker boots, periwinkle wings that cast back the bleating sun above. And up the road a castle of mortar and cone, and stone of course, for this thing was for the best part heavily cone-based. Spires lining the place like party hats on a garden wall, and I was swept away by memories of jelly and ice cream past the parcel and paper plates. Then I look aside to the green beyond the bluebells, and I see a great gaggle of tiny beings playing hacky sack. I love that game, and you kick around the little ball, the fabric sand. I love combining textures. Anyway, kicking a ball of sand about with your nearest and dearest is a wonderful thing. The fun shan't cease if you head for the coast and forget your beach ball, and I'll hear no excuse from a man with a hanky in his pocket and sand beneath his feet. If the world's your oyster, then the sand is your ball, and all can be achieved from the right point of view. Anyway, up and down the road lined with cabins, toy shops, flower beds, sweet shops, tailors, carpenters and sailors, I hear the clack of hard-soled boots on cobbled stone, service bells ringing out in general natter. "Hello, Frank, how's the wife? Come get your grapes, 2 pence a pound. And currant bun, please. No need to wrap it, I'm going to scran it outside the shop." And just as I'm standing in the square, still as stone, towering amongst the lot like a high-rise in a corduroy coat, I'm expecting a little guy to pop out of one of my pockets and start hanging his washing up to dry in the air. But they seem not to mind me completely, just coming by courteous as anything, smiling in acknowledgement and tipping their caps, and as they carry on into town. Amazing. I hear that voice again. "Teacake, is that you?" I spin around, and behind me, no higher than the summit of my knee bone, a tiny house of petals, stone and wood walkway, branching off a great oak, compiling of many other gaps all quite the same. A tiny lady looking over the window box, with dove-white hair, half up, half down, toffee penny glasses and a voice as subtle as the powder on her nose. I turned to face her. "She's come quite the way," I said. And after sitting for a few hours on the green beyond the bluebells, rattling off the years with my new pal, Miss Williams is her name, all cinnamon and spice. She reminds me of creaking pines and crickets in the tall grass, a sunset kind of person. As if there's another layer to her being that's entirely dusted in gold leaf, with an evening sun shining through it all. Great cook, makes a mean trifle. Do you cook trifles? Or are they assembled? Are they flat pack? Flat pack trifle. Trifles assembled. Anyway, speaking of sunsets, the sun was soon to tip its hat to the moon when I had an idea. While I'm here, I grab the puzzle book from my bag, and I stared into the pages for a few seconds. And the cogs began to whir, the crashing of cymbals as steam whistles from my ears. I see Miss Williams with a face painted in panic. She's just looking at me like, "You okay?" And yes, Miss Williams, I've never been better. I feel like a steamboat chewing coal on the river as I chug on. And before you know, like an ice tray full of alphabet soup, all the cubes were lettered. Finally, I clicked my knuckles and placed them behind my head as I flopped back on the green. Who's the king of the beach? Knew it, said Miss Williams. Finally some recognition amongst the kingdom. Only playing. It's a self-proclaimed title for my own empowerment. Anyway, I knew you could complete it. Sometimes you just need to stop for a tea cake before you do. It's all well and good getting things done, but what's the use making hard work of it all? Miss Williams was right. And she knew far better than myself that those words fell not on deaf ears. "Here," she said, handing me a Ziploc bag. I bring it towards myself to see what it was. It's a curranty bun. It's a tea cake. It's a tea cake in a plastic bag. I'll treasure that sentiment, as long as it grows stale on the sideboard. And I believe, said Miss Williams, sometimes what you need most is but a tea cake away. Make sure you stop to smell the tea cakes, Finneky. Lovely fruity things. I thanked Miss Williams, and by the time I shook her hand it was high time I hightailed for home, waving goodbye to the sleepy town below my knee, and heading back up the corridor with a tea cake up my sleeve like a magician who's discovered their inner and exterior worlds are closer than they seem. I pushed the door into the rising light of day, to find I completely lost track of time, catching the sun rising from its bunk into the powdery sky. Although without a wink of sleep in either eye, I felt like a brand new page of a textbook, untouched by ridges and dents of old scribbles and words. I'm marching down the trail with my bun, illuminated like the gossamer that flung about in the winds among the trail. Those tiny cobwebs you see flopping about in the wind catching the sun. They've not the vaguest idea where they'll end up, how or when. Like the crumbs behind the toaster, they're just happy to be swept. There's a great liberation to be had in a new perspective. I cannot see around corners, and the only way to acquire a different point of view is to move. I'm feeling entirely rolled in glitter about the whole thing, and march down the trail. And back at home, I place the tea cake on the mantelpiece, on a little cushion, cordoned off by velvet rope. So the dormice know their place. Eating me out of house and home they are. Came down the other morning to find one had a spindle between two bits of bread. Got any souls? He said. Well, anyway, since the tea cake has been lying in sight, I'm finding fewer crosswords to be had with myself. Because when the cubes start to bother me, I put the book aside for a bit. Because maybe the thing I need most is but a tea cake away. So stop to smell the tea cakes. Lovely fruity things. And if you should be in need of some time away with the fairies, the door is always open. Thank you. Until next time.